Okay, welcome everyone to another edition of Norfolk Hub Talks. Tonight we are thrilled to have with us Norfolk residents Fox Hysen and Molly Zuckerman-Hartung. And they will be talking about the arts of noticing, aesthetics, and the environment. We are grateful and continue to be grateful for our co-sponsors, the Norfolk Library, the Norfolk United Church of Christ Green Group, as well as the Norfolk Climate Coalition. While everybody is joining, I'm going to put up a quick poll if you get a chance, and just let us know how you heard about us. That would be great. It'll also let me know that there's actually people on board with us tonight. So while you're doing that, I'm just going to do a quick introduction. Molly Zuckerman-Hartung is a painter, writer, and teacher who grew up in Olympia, Washington, and participated in the Riot Girl in her formative years. She is also a senior critic in Yale School of Art Department of Painting and Printmaking. Fox Hysen was born in San Rafael, California, and received her MFA from Yale University in 2015 and her BFA from New York University in 2006. Currently, she teaches at the School of Art Institute, Chicago, and Yale University. This summer, she is the critic in residence at the Hofberger School of Painting at MICA in Baltimore. So without further ado, I am going to just give everybody another second here to reply to the poll. And I'm going to stop my share so that you, Fox and Molly, you can go ahead and start your screen share. And there they are. Welcome. Thank you for being here. So excited, and you can take it from here.
Thanks so much, Dawn.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn.
And thanks, Tom Murtha, for inviting us to give this talk tonight. The Norfolk Climate Change Coalition, I think it's called.
Yes.
Okay.
How should I just start?
Oops, you have it so that it's going to play automatically.
No.
No. Okay.
I don't think so. I'm changing it.
Okay.
I think I'm good. Okay. So retitling the talk, From Landscape to Environment, Nurturing the Local. I'm going to just sort of set the stage for Fox to talk more specifically about the residency and give you kind of a set of images to think about how we're thinking about the residency. This is the house that Fox and I bought when we moved to Norfolk. I think it's been a little over 3 years now.
3 years, yep.
Yeah. So this is what it looked like when we bought it. And this is just our side yard. I don't know if you want to sort of start saying something about the imagination of it, or.
Yeah, let's just go back to the first slide real quick. I think we should just introduce ourselves by saying that we're both artists from the West Coast, and we both moved to Connecticut. I went to grad school at Yale, and Molly teaches at Yale, and we were living just outside of New Haven, and the Yale School of Art was here, and so Molly visited the Yale School of Art, and so had I, and we were just looking all over Connecticut to buy a house somewhere, and so we looked just in about every town in Connecticut, and we really just fell in love with Norfolk. And I mean, this house seemed like a disaster to everybody, and our neighbor Mark Burke came out in bare feet and just said, like, you should really buy this house. This is a great house. It's got good bones. And somehow we just trusted him, and so we started on this adventure in this house. And people come by and tell us all the time, thanks for fixing it up. It looks great. And we've just over the last 3 years felt, more and more welcome in the town, and really appreciate a certain ethos that we find here.
We were even specifically drawn to the house because it had been a commune for 40 years, a Jewish commune. And I think so that the idea of collectives, the idea of some sense of collaboration being able to happen in the town sort of started with the house too and its history.
Yeah, and so we have these, we're kind of trying to set up maybe a framework for you with a few quotes. So we'll just read this first quote to you. Everything could be otherwise. Could this be the first rule of composition? And so maybe this is something that we want to, maybe we could talk about this idea for the residency as a way of talking about composition. If everything could be otherwise, how do we sort of organize ourselves in a place to change a place? And we feel that Norfolk is potentially is open to change, and there's a lot of great thinkers here, and so we're excited to present the residency to you, because I don't know, maybe we think about it as composition, because Molly's going to talk a lot about the pictorial, so we're going to talk about the overlap of composition and change. This is our front yard here. These are some chairs I built actually for our front yard. And that's Mark Burke's house across the street there. Or just across the way, rather. You can see there's a slide in the upper right corner that's from Beit Havura left over. It's probably a slide from the 70s. Still there from when we moved in.
One of the inspirations, I think, one of the big inspirations for, I think a lot of the ways, especially that you think about participating in the art world, comes from Lucy Lepard. And we have a number of quotes from her in this talk. This one is, "Landscape can only be seen from the outside as a backdrop for the experience of viewing. Space defines landscape, where space combined with memory defines place. The lure of the local is the geographical component of the psychological need to belong somewhere, one antidote to a prevailing alienation."
So for me, as a person who has been in and around the art world for a long time, but sort of also always feeling like maybe slightly outside of it, there's something exciting about, there's always something exciting about bringing the art world to you. And so the idea of the residency is really to try to bring, not the art world, but really art to Norfolk.
Yeah. So briefly, I just guess I wanted to talk about just one idea, and the idea is landscape and the picturesque. The picturesque was an idea and an ideal of the 18th century. It was actually invented in 1782 as a word by Gilpin, which instructed England's leisured travelers to examine the face of a country by the rules of picturesque beauty. So this would sort of be what our ideas about landscape painting might center around, a kind of romantic idea of, I don't know, the tall oak tree here, the sort of majestic nature. And very often in the picturesque, you'd see ruins mixed or sitting next to sort of powerful trees. And then they moved landscape, the idea of landscape and the picturesque moved into the old oak tree, the kind of withered, beaten down oak tree that's still standing. And we have a lot of these kinds of trees around here. We all know these trees. But I think that fabulous as the history of landscape painting is, wanting to talk about an aesthetic of the environment, of ecology, we wanted to move away from ideas of the pictorial or the picturesque or landscape at all. So the psychoanalyst D.W. Winnicott, here, I'll let you, do you want to do this?
Oh, sure. Okay. so I like, I'll just go back one more time. I like these old withered, now I'm looking at these trees, they kind of remind me of the house that we moved into, or something that is kind of broken and obscure and singular. And maybe there's something in that for the metaphor of this new residency, this idea of this residency, about kind of trying to, yeah, find a diamond in the rough, or sort of find beauty in something kind of singular, like these old withered trees. And our main inspiration, one of good dear friend of Molly's and mentor of Molly's from Chicago, is Michelle Grabner, and we've gone to the Poor Farm in Wisconsin just about every year for the past 4 or 5 years or so. Yeah. And we've seen how she has taken an idea of the local and transformed it into something that is a location for people to get outside of the city, a think tank of sorts, that it's a way for people to think about art and landscape and the local outside of normal art centers, which are usually in cities. And so Molly's brought in W.D. Winnicott, who's a psychoanalyst who talks about holding environments. So we're kind of trying to relate the idea of environment to an idea of care. You want to read that quote?
Sure, yeah. He used the term holding environment to describe the optimal environment for good enough parenting. So we're moving from landscape to environment. He suggested that emotional problems developed when a person had been deprived of such holding environments in childhood, and that a level of holding was critical to the therapeutic environment. And this is Michelle in her garden in Manawa, Wisconsin, which is across the street. They have a cabin across the street from the Poor Farm, which is a large institutional space that she and her husband, Brad, have turned into, as Fox said, it's kind of like a Kunsthal in rural Wisconsin.
Yeah, so it's not an artist residency, it's more an exhibition space.
And this is Fox at the Poor Farm. And yeah, so if landscape was about a picture, an image, a representation of the land, environment can mean something else, the experience of being held.
And I think I'll say here that one of the challenges for us in thinking about giving this talk about the environment was because we're not scientists. We're not researchers.
Ecologists.
We're not researchers. And so we had to ask ourselves, how do we think that artists can engage in the environment? And I would say that the link is more of a weak link than a strong link. But we think that sometimes weak links can be very meaningful. And so if we think about just ideas of noticing, say we as artists walk around the yard and we notice things about our yard, or we notice things about the environment. I mean, we learn things in small ways all the time that are maybe just kind of ordinary. But I think that what artists are good at is building models for thinking, or
making
connections and building community. And so I think that where some artists who work on the environment are working directly doing research about the environment, our relationship to the environment is about sort of creating a different kind of system within Norfolk as an environment, a kind of hub of exchange, or a hub of just shared ideas, or cross-pollination, in the way that the Poor Farm has been. Here's some quotes from Robert Smithson.
The investigation of a specific site is a matter of extracting concepts out of existing sense data through direct perceptions. One does not impose, but rather expose the site. The unknown areas of sites can best be explored by artists. Robert Smithson was mostly well known for the spiral jetty. He was one of the what were called earth artists in the 1960s who left the gallery system and went out into the Southwest, or he did partially buried woodshed in Ohio. So these different sort of works that took place in in sites, and something that Smithson even started to call non-sites. So there is a lot of different histories for an engagement with the land in and outside of art. So that's another sort of one of the conversations we're interested in having is, where does art belong? And this is a series of works that Smithson made that are displacements, mirror displacements is what they were called. So he would just put a mirror on the ground, and the mirror became part of the environment and also reflected a different part of the environment. So created a kind of continuity and discontinuity.
And so maybe this is a good example of like artists maybe will do some kind of an intervention. So rather than doing research on the environment, here you have a mirror placed in the environment, and maybe it does nothing else but to just slow you down. Maybe it does nothing else but to sort of make you see things in reverse for a second as a mirror image, or create a different kind of distance for you in the landscape. At the beginning of COVID, Molly and I were both really thinking a lot about permaculture, and this is the first rule of permaculture, right?
I think so. Yeah, totally. Before you do anything else, you just observe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be very clear, we're most of our neighbors are much more elaborate and impressive gardeners than we are. We're new. Yes. We're sort of like a little bit beginners at almost everything, and hopefully that energy allows anybody to join us or to help us or to tell us what they're doing and have an interest. I think that the value of curiosity is one of our values. So yeah, observation, walking the site, make maps, note what is there and how it interacts with its surroundings. Just observe, don't analyze. Make lists, follow up with research into what was observed, the habits of species, soil types, and the like.
So we keep coming back to Lucy Lepard when we were thinking about this talk. It just was all coming up Lucy Lepard. Can you move this little thing?
I can't. Okay. No, it just gets in the way and it's
stuck. Okay. So she writes, I've been asked whether attention to the local could become tunnel vision, resulting in the loss of big picture and the ability to communicate across boundaries. For now, I worry more about the loss of the small picture. Local does not have to mean isolated, self-indulgent, or inbred. In fact, those terms apply better to the art world. So I agree with this here. I think that trying to bring some kind of art to a place like Norfolk actually is really enlivening and enriching. The art world can be very homogenous and closed down, actually. So here we have this great potential for opening it up and sharing ideas and art with each other in a much gentler, easy kind of way.
And these are things that Norfolk is already really familiar with, right? This is the history of Norfolk. So we know that we're in some ways preaching to the choir, but we're sort of trying to talk about what is already here as something that is already quite a large something. And we're sort of, so even just the language of what happens in Norfolk with people going to the music concerts, over the whole century, and coming to the artist talks, and artists installing work on the Norfolk school grounds. But also, it's really important that we are townspeople. We live here, and so there's that. I guess part of the vision is that there's a real bridging between whatever the Yale School of Art is and whatever the town is, and building that bridge stronger. These are just skeletons that garden. We're maybe going to move into a little bit of a darker, or I don't know. Yeah, the grief aspects of the environment. So I just wanted to share, as a sort of closing on this part of the talk before Fox shows you the residency website, I just wanted to share about a few books that I've read in the past year or so and I think maybe many of you have as well, that have been about how we need to be thinking about the environment now with climate change and all of the sort of transformations and the dying off of species. So this is actually by a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine's husband, Roy Scranton, and this was originally a New York Times article, op-ed article, I think, that was turned into a book, Learning to Die in the Anthropocene. And he writes, the trouble now is that we must learn to die, not as individuals, but as a civilization.
And this book, Learning to Die in the Anthropocene, I mean, we're not experts at all, but it seems that it's become almost a whole genre of types of books that are being written about the environment, center on the Anthropocene as being, there's another book which we maybe not included here called The Sixth Extinction, that humans are now really causing the end of an era. And so part of what this genre of books talks about is how we as people, how we as groups form new types of relationships and bonds and communities through this existential next phase of our existence as people on this planet. So another popular book, maybe some of you know, by Donna Haraway, is called Staying with the Trouble.
Yeah, that quote is, "It matters what matters we use to think other matters with. It matters what stories we tell to tell other stories with. It matters what knots knot knots, what thoughts think thoughts, what descriptions describe descriptions, what ties tie ties. It matters what stories make worlds, what worlds make stories."
Maybe we could say, it matters what artists
artists.
This is The Mushroom at the End of the World. I look for disturbance-based ecologies in which many species sometimes live together without either harmony or conquest.
From A Billion Black Anthropocenes or None by Catherine Yusoff. I want to pay attention to the grammars of geology and to think with the modes of objectification that the genre of the Anthropocene both unleashes and maintains. And this text is taking on the Anthropocene and suggesting that when it, the Anthropocene as a term, of course, means a period in human history that is, or a period in ecological and earth history that is now fundamentally fundamentally human affected. But to take on again the question of the human is to reduce, to universalize something that cannot be universalized. And so this is trying to think through metaphors of geology as structures of power structures and ways in which they've produced oppressive circumstances for different peoples, and working through the history of slavery in the US. And so really kind of pulling these things really close together, the environment, the collapse of the environment, and the history of slavery.
I don't know this one.
Okay, this is just an anthology, The Arts of Living on a Damaged Planet, and this is just a passage. It's using a lot of different kinds of metaphors, again, metaphors of ghosts, of haunting, thinking about landscapes that are haunted. It's one of the very, very sort of common ways of talking about landscape in terms of both social and ecological damage that happen in a landscape is invoking the ghost or the haunting. And monsters, tentacular, as in like octopus, windy and arboreal arts that invite readers to encounter ants, lichen, rocks, electrons, flying foxes, salmon, chestnut trees, mud volcanoes, border zones, graves, radioactive waste. In short, the wonders and terrors of an unintended epoch. And this is just a drawing that has emerged in the last year and a few months. And I guess I just, This is by a trans artist in San Francisco named Glammy, that I found as I was planning a class that I taught, a grad seminar called Going Outside. Yeah, so it's a forest painted with their blood the night before their COVID test in 2020. And I was thinking just about like new emerging forms that I'm seeing on social media. I'm seeing them amongst my students, of bringing together, for example, identity and ways of understanding oneself in connection to the earth, into questions of climate change or ecological change, and making sort of new hybrid genres that I think have different feelings than landscape might have had in the past, but I think also have connections to more landscape traditions. Yeah.
So maybe these we have two last quotes here, which are maybe a little dense. What do you think?
You want to
should
come back to them and do the website for a minute?
Maybe I'll just do this last one, and then we can move on. This is maybe a little bit of a jump, but I was reading an older book of Lucy Lepard's, Pink Glass Swan, which is a compilation of essays, and she writes, the women's art I was writing about in the early 70s has since in many cases become downright central to the art world, even as inequities continue to reign for the majority. See Guerrilla Girl posters. I am just as ambivalent as I was in 1970 when our energies were concentrated on getting the art world gates open and admit women artists. I'm still convinced that this society has yet to find a healthy context for art, and that the commercial art world is a lousy place for artists and a lousy place for art. Nevertheless, I feel strongly and have worked hard to ensure that women artists, including artists of color, have the same chances to choose to profit from that system as anyone else. Even as I hope that someday a revolution will overturn it and offer something far better. So I don't know if this is a revolution, but we do hope that as people maybe move out of the cities and into smaller, decentralized places, that can be a better holding environment to create art and for artists. And we hope that the residency here can be one of those places.
Go to that one? The residency?
Oh, yeah. Oops, you stopped the share.
I know, I have to go into a different share.
Oh, I see.
There are a couple of questions. Did you want to go through those before?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So from Elizabeth Knowles, we have, how do you think your work, especially the residency, and maybe this will be answered in the rest, in the Norfolk community can catalyze a greater awareness and appreciation of our changing climate and climate action around building community and helping everyone develop a personal and common aesthetic within our local environmental landscape? By the way, this there's a PS. By the way, this question is from Tom Murtha, and by the magic of Zoom, I seem to be showing up here. Oh, okay. So this is actually Tom.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
Maybe it's better that we just we'll get through we'll just do about 5 or 10 minutes here with the website, and then we'd like to save about 20 minutes at the end for questions and ask you guys questions and hear your ideas, because I know a lot of you are here and we'd love to hear what you think. So maybe I'll just quickly read you this about page. This is the same thing on the invite for this talk. How can art connect us with the place and the environment of that place? So I won't read that. Okay, about the residency. The Norfolk residency aims at inviting at least 4 artists per year, though I'll say we have already at least 4 artists coming over the summer, so we're exceeding that. In exchange for lodgings and a studio to work in, we hope visiting artists will invite us to learn about their practice. The goal of the residency is to produce meaningful dialogue between local residents and visiting artists, writers, and thinkers. Visitors to the residency, oops, typo, I wrote that twice. Okay, will participate in an ongoing series of artist talks and workshops. So when we invite an artist to stay at the residency, we also invite the artist to give a talk to the town. The historic town of Norfolk is home to Yale University's prestigious summer art program. However, it's also home to an abundance of artists, craftspeople, and writers and thinkers who live here full time. Norfolkians are bright, knowledgeable, hardworking people who are eager to cross-pollinate and share ideas about all sorts of things. About the collective, so in addition to being a residency, we are also a collective. Right now, I think we have about 10 to 12 members. In addition to the residency, Greenwoods 2058 is a collective of artists who live and work in the Berkshire area. Each member of the collective participates by inviting artists to stay at the residency. All visiting artists are invited by members of the collective. There's no application process. In this way, we attempt to build a community. Each member also produces a series of art objects that are sold to support the Norfolk residency. We split the sale of each multiple 50-50 with the artists. So each purchase supports both the residency and the local member artist. Yeah, so there's no application process. The members within the collective work to invite artists, get artists to come and stay.
Show a little bit of this, or?
Sure.
Or maybe the residents first? No.
Yeah, we'll go to the shop here.
Okay.
So the collective members are also making art for the residency. So here we have, I'll just show you here, Juliet Jacobson is an artist who's actually in Cold Spring, so she's a little bit away, but Molly and I are in a reading group with her, and we see her a lot, and she's up here. This is actually a print that she will make. It's it looks all curled up, but this is actually the edge is the white edge is actually the edge of the paper, not the curled up thing. So it's a print of something that's 3D, and
Photograph of a cloud.
It's a photograph of a cloud. Yeah,
we've actually the book group has been reading a book about cloud for a long time. So she's thinking extensively about clouds.
Yeah.
Speaking of climate change.
This is an artist, whoops, never mind. Where'd they go? I guess that one didn't work.
Oh, there it is.
This is an artist named Alex Valentine, who is also a senior critic at Yale, who is the print shop person, and he made this series of prints. Actually, he made his own ink, and let's see, I'll go here. So he burnt the birch and the ash wood to make all of the blacks here that you see in this print.
And he was also explaining the process to me that it involved, gosh, what were the other things? Alcohol that was like pulled out of in some way out of the hand sanitizers that we all have a lot of now. And a tampon was used in the filtration process. So all of the materials are witty.
Yeah, we asked the artists to try to think a little bit about the environment as they were doing it, though again, we're not researchers, we're not ecologists or scientists. So the way that, I think the way that Alex went about this, just by using a little bit of wood to make these inks is pretty terrific.
Yeah, I think that again and again, it's about which direction we turn our attention. I think ideas of noticing, ideas of attention, ideas of slowing into an environment, retraining ourselves, whether we're artists or not, to be paying a different kind of attention. It's one of the, yeah.
This is from an artist named Acacia Maribel. I hope I'm saying your last name, Maribel. And Acacia's actually been living in the building with Daniel, and Acacia's been taking walks in the woods and has been enjoying
making the drawings not at all.
Making drawings about just like being out in the woods and kind of making fun of that a little bit. But so this drawing says, every day I wake up and dig a hole.
And walk into the woods and dig a hole and take a shit and feel closer to
So she's just talking about feeling
nature.
Feeling closer to nature here. This is a local artist, Hilary Van Wright, actually making work about my home place in Northern California. So anyway, that's just to give you an idea of these things. This is a poem by Molly. Anyway, so part of the residency, we'll have this shop. There'll be a little shop in the building where all of these little objects will be for sale, and it will also be the place where we invite artists to come to give talks. And what else? Maybe eventually we'll have a little coffee shop in there. But it's our little marketplace there in the front room of the building.
Is that good?
I think that's probably pretty good.
Good conclusion.
Yeah.
This is the building. If you're not familiar with it already, 58 Greenwoods Road. It's right before the road turns, right before the big pink church. Just as you're beginning to gather speed and pass through Norfolk. And this sort of, maybe you can see my cursor. This is the little shop, and the backside here is the residency. But this little front porch area is the shop. Should we stop share and just ask for questions? Looks like we've got some.
Okay.
I think it's a Q&A there.
Okay. Q&A.
Do you want to handle that? Can you see the questions?
Yep.
I could read Tom's again, or?
No, I think we're looking at them.
Okay.
How do you think your work, especially the residency in the Norfolk community, can catalyze a greater awareness and appreciation of our changing climate and climate action around building community and helping everyone develop a personal and common aesthetic within our local environmental landscape? I love Tom. Tom has helped us to organize this in the first place. I think that I guess what we're hoping for is to create a kind of a space in which maybe the questions or the ideas or the attention or what is noticed and how it is noticed can be shared in ways that are not clearly understood yet. So that it's not like, I think it's hard to tell how we begin to pay attention to climate change. It's a long, slow, not as slow as we'd like, but a slow change. And so how we develop awareness about something that is changing around us, that is our environment. I think we're posing that as a question, and we're inviting artists to come and to spend time together and with the community to ask that question in many different ways. We're hoping that community members have things to share with visitors to help them think about that. I think that even just beginning to walk in the woods or experience any part of a Norfolk winter can change your perspective. And I think, yeah.
And I think that the way that we're going to have to begin to build community once climate change is really increasingly upon us is, well, there was this article by Royce Granton called The New Normal. And he's just pointing out that even after we're done with this pandemic, like we're not going to just like wake up and go back to life as usual. So it usually helps to have people to talk to when confronting, potential crises, and hopefully this model of the residency, just as, it's just an offering. It's not that much for us to do. All we have to do is to say, rather than running this space as an Airbnb or something like that, we're just inviting artists to come, and they don't have to pay us anything. They just have to give a talk. So it's really a kind of a small exchange and a small cost to us. And we hope maybe just in that, then this small gesture, if I can just call it a gesture, is this type of gesture of building community is something that we will see more of as as global art market, as people don't want to sort of like, who cares about like NTFs in the global art market anymore? I mean, I think that we all increasingly need spaces to feel each other and to have conversation and dialogue with each other. And I think that artists in art communities are good at producing that.
Yeah, and I think it's not even just dialogue, right? It's also like moving back towards things that people in a place like Norfolk already know about, like helping your neighbors, like being you know, it's like there's more and more storms these days, and so, you know, more and more people have generators. It's like we talk about climate change as though that's happening in the New York Times, and we talk about generators in the countryside. And I guess like one of the things that I hope is that those conversations have something to do with one another. That, you know, Alex Valentine's prints of the trees were I'm sorry, I was just reading the next question. His prints of the trees were about trees that he had seen fall in the last year over the storm periods. So one of the trees fell in his house and really brought the situation of more trees falling all the time to his attention, which made him think about trees, conspiring trees, like what are the trees thinking? Why are they falling? And of course, we know one of the things that's going on is that the ash tree is dying. That's one of the trees that falls more frequently now. But I guess it's making those connections, right? It's being able to sort of see many sides of what's going on.
We have a question. Would you invite an artist who has more to learn than to say? I'd say that it's hard to know who has more to learn and who has more to say. Probably the way I would think of it is that different people have different things to learn and different things of different people, different things to say. And one of my hopes for the residency is that the artists that do come, I have been in this town long enough to know that people have really an intensely amazing relationship to craft. Our neighbor, Mark and Leanne, they have Kingsland Lumber. In my fantasy, maybe they would open up their shop and collaborate with an artist to build something. They're both, Leanne's weaving baskets and Mark's building these weird ladderback chairs and working on his chicken coop all the time. And, he really, they both think just a lot about craft. So if an artist wanted to come and collaborate, we have somebody who works with stone. I think there's also the Norfolk Foundation, the historical, what is it called?
The Historical Society.
The Historical Society. So I think that there's a lot to learn here, but the idea is really an exchange. Like what could an artist come here and learn, and then what does an artist, how can they repay that gift by sharing something in response? So maybe I think of it more as a call and response than who has more, who has less.
Another question from Tom: how can the Norfolk community support and participate in the work you're doing in Norfolk through the artist residency? Buy the work of the artists, donations, participate in co-creating site-specific installations under the guidance of artists in the residency. I love all these suggestions. Definitely buying the work of the artists and of the collective members, or just stopping by the shop. Fox will tell us about the event, the first event that's planned, in just a minute. But we hadn't actually thought about donations. I think we'll have to figure that out. But also, yes, I love this idea of participating in co-creating site-specific installations. I'm hoping that somebody comes along who wants to do a workshop.
Oh yes, we should say that artists are invited to do workshops, not just talks. And I hope also to invite members of the community to also give workshops and talks. That again, it's an exchange.
Yeah, if there's a community member that would like to do a workshop during a residency or in adjacency to a visit by an artist, that would be amazing.
Yeah, and I'll just say that our first event, actually, we have Danny Reestack, who teaches at the University of Ohio State University in Columbus. And She's a video artist. She was in the most recent Whitney Biennial, and she is going to show her trilogy, which are 3 films. And we're going to do a screening of those 3 films at 649 Litchfield Road, where I've rented a studio up there. The information is all on the website. And that same day, May 1st, we'll have the shop open and people can come by and see the art there.
Here's the events page on the residency, and you can see the residency is just Greenwoods 2058. Oh, you want to explain why you called it Greenwoods 2058?
The address is Greenwoods Road 58, or 58 Greenwoods Road, and so I just thought it was just a nod to the future, something subtle. I always think about why the road is called Greenwoods. I figured that there might have been more trees here that were evergreen than in other places. That's been my thought. If anybody knows or has more information about why it's called Greenwoods, I'd be interested. And of course, we hope that the Northwest forests heal and continue to be green in the future. So those are the thoughts about Greenwood 2058.
Do you have any more questions?
Does anybody want to open it up to ask a question verbally, or are we allowed to kind of do
something more? I don't know if they can.
I don't think we can do that through a webinar, but they can certainly post in the chat or the Q&A for sure.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about that first event coming up?
Yeah, so the event is just a film screening. It will be an hour long.
Here it is.
We'll start with the opening of the shop, which is at Greenwoods 58, and then the film screening is up the hill, up on Dennis Hill, right afterwards, starting at 7 o'clock. So that will go from about 7 to 8. And we hope it is going to be inside, though it's a very, very airy kind of barn-like structure. We'll have the doors open. We'll invite people inside and wear masks inside. Kind of, it's a big space, so we'll kind of spread out. We're thinking in order to do the film screening, we need to have the sound, so it's outside on the road. This is sort of the best case scenario we thought for doing the film screening.
You probably know the building, 649 Litchfield Road. It's Rob and Pilar Bristol Prophet place, big gray building out on Litchfield Road.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we should say?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I undid my mute. I'm sorry. So if we don't have any other questions, I'll just bring up my screen here. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. A great introduction. I know that there's going to be great excitement over bringing artists in for talks and just that connection with the community. Everybody's going to jump on board with this. I think you're going to be very popular this summer, if I could say so. So thank you very much.
Looks like Danny made a comment. Danny made a comment in the chat.
Oh, let's see. Oh, she says, hi, I'm Danny. Oops, there's a lot of them there. Hold on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, one more thing. It looks like Tom is also asking us about how we see the residency and our work in the community unfolding over the spring, summer, and fall, as hopefully the pandemic ebbs. Yeah, the timeline for now, there are, as Fox said, at least 4 artists just coming this summer. So there will be more events. And I would just say, if you're interested, they will be posted on the website under events. So if you just sort of keep your eye on that. We also will probably use.
We'll be sending them to you also,
Dawn. Yeah.
Dawn can help get the word out for us.
Absolutely.
Future events.
We will get the word out for you for sure.
Yeah.
From Danny, she says, I'll show 3 shorts in the books I'm working on at the residency. They are companion texts.
Right. Yes. There's books that accompany the films that Danny will also have on display. Maybe we can show those in the shop before the film.
Excellent. All right.
All right.
Thank you so much for letting us do this.
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, have a good night, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.